Hello, everyone, and welcome to another community conversation on the health crisis in WHO.
Of personnel.
That's a great
Another
question,
element
and I would
is
direct them to
We're thinking outside the box, trying to come up with new ways
And
of
as
moving.
you already mentioned, the city is
Let's try to keep these numbers from doubling.
head over 33%. Hope you watch traffic.
First, I want to say thank you for inviting me to the show.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another community conversation here on Facebook Live. I'm Mayor Eric Pappenfuss, and today we're going to be celebrating the career of a gentleman who is going to be officially retiring on Monday. That is Deputy Chief Deric Moody of the Harrisburg Police Department, who has spent the better part of the last 28 years serving the public and protecting our safety. We're going to talk to Deric about his career and about his time here at the city, what things have changed, maybe some of the lessons he's learned on the job, and what he's going to be doing in the years ahead. But before we get to that, and we've got a distinguished panel of guests, I should say. We've got not only the commissioner, but we have a variety of colleagues of DC Moody's who are going to talk a little bit about their experiences with him as both a police officer and a man. And we'll get to them in just a minute. We'll keep some of that a little bit of a surprise. But I wanted to begin, as we have historically, with a few announcements and a little bit of news. And the first news is, we got our BioBot data back after a couple-week hiatus. And again, for regular viewers, you know what this data represents. It is the wastewater epidemiology for the city of Harrisburg and the surrounding region, and it shows the prevalence of the virus. And what we're seeing is very encouraging. It's showing a decline of the spike that we experienced in November, December, and even January. That we're actually back to sort of Thanksgiving time levels, which is good. That's the trajectory we want to see. It's still elevated, it's still high, but it's going in the right direction. I'm going to feel even more comfortable when that result is affirmed by a few more tests, but we're continuing to do the weekly testing with BioBot, and that also reflects a decline overall in Pennsylvania. You can see the normalized virus concentration vis-a-vis the 7-day rolling average of new cases in our county on that graph. And on the second graph, also encouraging signs, a little bit better than usual. We've talked in the past about how Harrisburg has really sort of been an outlier, but now our sample concentration is really only higher than about 31% of the samples that are being tested nationally, which means we're in the bottom half, and that's good. That's also moving in the right direction. So I see a lot of encouraging things. We're looking at, in their estimate, 90 new cases a day in the Harrisburg metropolitan area. But again, all of this is down from where it was as recently as a few weeks ago, and certainly before the holidays. So we'll continue to monitor that. That does not mean that people don't need to continue to remain vigilant, wear masks, wash hands, socially distance themselves. But it does hopefully mean that this, coupled with what we hope in February and March will be a vaccine rollout with renewed vigor, will hopefully allow us to get through this by the time we get to the summer, and we should be in a much different place. So I wanted to give you some encouraging news there about COVID in the Harrisburg area. Other general announcements. Remember that City Council is back from break. Their next meeting is scheduled for this Tuesday, February 2nd at 5:30 p.m. Sessions are continuing to be held virtually, but it is now possible for the public to comment and read their comments and make their comments in person, which is a new development for this year and is working well. I've been asked to remind folks that this is the time of year to get dog licenses. If you get your license before March 1st, it's only $6 for a year, or you can get a multi-year package. And more information. We sent a mailer in the trash bills to everyone about dog licenses. And you may have seen that we did an announcement this past week that for this year's Fire and Ice Festival, we are renaming it because there will be no fire, just ice. And we're calling it Ice in the Berg. It's going to take place over multiple days on March 5th, 6th, and 7th. And just imagine a sort of winter wonderland of ice sculptures scattered throughout the city and City Island, an ability to sort of view them and participate on your own and in the safety of either your own vehicle or on an outdoor walking tour. it should be fun. It's another example of how we're taking our traditional festivals, adapting them for COVID, but allowing us to still have them and still have people come out and enjoy themselves safely outdoors. So March 5th, 6th, and 7th will be Ice in the Berg. And now we are pleased to turn to our studio guest, affectionately known as DC for Deputy Chief, DC Deric Moody, who joins us here. DC, it has been 28 years plus working here at the city of Harrisburg. Let's set the stage for this show with a little bit of biographical data about yourself. You were born in the Philadelphia area and went to Catholic school, I understand. So how did your schooling and early upbringing sort of influence your career path?
That's a good question. Yes, I did go to, I was born and raised in West Philadelphia, and you know how the rest of the song goes.
Yeah.
But no, more seriously, I went to Catholic school my entire life. My mother was in charge of the religion in the house. My mother is Catholic, so we didn't really have a choice in the matter, but my mother decided Catholic school was the way for us to go, and was very appreciative of that because I think as a young age in the Catholic school environment, there was a lot of structure. There were a lot of rules and a lot of things that you had to do the right way. And it just really helped me to understand, you know, my place as a young man growing up. My family was not overly religious, but we had to go to church on Sunday. That was one of the rules. I later became an altar boy when I was of age and had the appropriate age to become so. And a lot of the structure and guidance for me came in the household. We had a pretty strong family. I have two younger sisters and I have two older brothers, so I'm dead smack in the middle. But it was very interesting time to grow up in the 80s is where I was born in 1970. So about the 80s, things were very fun as a kid. Growing up, neighborhood, we played a lot of neighborhood games. We did a lot of stuff in the neighborhood within our neighborhood. Going off to Catholic school, I did my middle school and then my high school was both in Catholic school, but my father was in the Marine Corps, so a lot of the things that I tried to do was be like my father, for a lack of better words. My father was a Philadelphia police officer, as was my oldest brother. He was a Philadelphia highway patrolman. And just kind of growing up and looking at my father and my brother when he would come through, because my brother's older than I, when he would come around, and just listening to them talk, seeing my brother in uniform, really kind of put the thought into my head. And as a kid growing up, a lot of the stories that, or the teaching moments that my father had for me, the story was either wrapped around the police department or the Marine Corps. So if it was a teaching moment that my father had to tell me, the story was somehow wrapped around there. So in the 10th grade, I remember I knew I wanted to go in the Marine Corps and I knew I wanted to be a police officer. So in the 10th grade, I tried to enlist in the Marine Corps. Most kids thinking, hey, I want to get this started pretty quickly. I want a lot of things I want to do. So I learned early that, I had to wait a little bit. And what I would do is after school, I went to Archbishop John Carroll High School in Radnor, Pennsylvania. Our choices back then were West Catholic Boys or Archbishop Carroll. And my mother didn't want us going to school downtown. So we had the train ride to high school. And when I would get out of school, I would go right downtown to 69th Street, and there was a Marine Corps recruiting station down there. And I would sit down there, I would answer the phones, I would do everything that I could just because I really wanted to get in the Marine Corps, and I really wanted to get started with what I wanted to do. So that was kind of my younger years. I had some really close friends back then that I'm still really close with, still keep in contact with. But that kind of set the tone for me as to what I wanted to do. So I knew very early on, I would say I think I have pictures from about when I was like 6 years old with my father's police hat on, and I had my leather jacket that made me look like I had my little gun belt, and I wanted to be a policeman, and I wanted to be in the Marine Corps. So
Yeah.
that kind of set the tone for me.
Now, along the way, we'll talk about the Marine Corps in a second, but you meet the woman who is going to become your wife.
Yep.
And tell us about that.
So I met my wife, Angelina. We were at Dr. Bruno was, I believe, our instructor's name. I went to community college while I went into reserves, in Marine Corps reserves, and I went to college in between. And I first met my wife in Dr. Bruno's class, criminal justice class. And it just so happens that my neighbor, a girl who lived on my same street, across the street from me, Tracy, her and Angie sat next to each other in the back of the classroom. So obviously when I saw my wife, I was like, man, she's a pretty girl there. And it helped that she was sitting next to my neighbor. So I had an automatic in. So I would I would bug my neighbor all the time when we were in class. I'd be like, so what's up with Angie, you know? What's she about, you know? Does she talk about me and stuff? And she would just be like, look, you need to just talk to her yourself. So eventually one day, I think we had a assignment that we had to do, and we were in the library. And I just said, okay, here's my chance. I'm gonna go up and talk to her. And I did. And fortunately, my wife, I didn't know she was going to be my wife at the time, but she was very receptive, and we started dating. I would walk her to class, and you know, and pick her up, because I think she was working back then. She was working up in the Boulevard at I forget what it was, like a tax place or something like that. So I would work, and she worked late nights. So I would work. I would get off work. I would after class I would work. I'd go home. I'd take a nap so that I could get back to pick her up from her job. I think she got off around 10 or 11 o'clock at night. And I would pick her up from the Northeast, and then she lived in North Philly and around Huntington Park area. And I would drive her back to her house. Well, we would drive back to West Philly, we'd eat, and then we'd drive back to North Philly, and I'd drop her off at her house. And that's kind of how we started. And then we had our first child, Melissa, pretty early, and just been together ever since. So.
Yeah, and obviously you knew the career path you were going to take even at that time. You were walking in your father's footsteps, and you've been married the whole time. You've been with the Harrisburg Police Department. What's the key to a successful marriage, especially for maybe a police officer, somebody who's in a demanding job with regard to timing, and it can put a lot of demands on family life?
I don't know that I have the exact answer, because I'm still practicing myself. One thing that I will say, one of the key things that I've learned, and I'm still learning and still practicing, is patience. Compromise, I think, is one of the bigger ones, because, you know, people can kind of get set in their own ways and want to do things their own way and how they like it. But when you start a family and when you have others, you have to factor all of that in, and there's a give and take. I've always considered myself a very direct person, oriented. I know what I want. I know how I want to get there. I have a path to get there, and I want to stick on my path. But you have to build in. I guess, alternatives or bumps in the road. You have to factor those in, that it may not go the way that you want it to at the time. I believe in God, so my strength, when I had questions about some of that, was back to faith, you know, and I wasn't steered wrong for a lot of reasons. Things that I just didn't see. Again, I knew where I wanted to get. I thought I had a path to get there, but if something took a turn or for the wrong way, I just have to go back to faith. My mother, I talk to my mom all the time. I have a good, strong communication with my mom. I have a lot of good things for me, but patience and compromise are two high ones, and you have to love the person. You really have to, and I think a little bit of it is you have to love yourself before you can love someone else. So if you struggle in those areas, it gets a little bit challenging. But I was fortunate because I have a wife that was very patient because although we tend to think that we know what we want to do, we know how we want to get there, we really need balance sometimes. You need somebody else to kind of be there for you and balance. And my wife has been there for me for a long time. We've got to learn and grow together. And it's we've had challenges like every other person, but we're still together. So
Yeah, and I'm sure it helps to have similar interests. Your wife currently works for Dauphin County, right?
correct.
And you know, you share that that commitment to a similar career path. Let's talk about the Marine Corps, because I know this was central to how you saw your career trajectory and is an important part of who you are. What did you take from your service time?
The Marine Corps, for me, and understand, I'm not here to talk bad about any other branch of service, but I went in the Marine Corps because they were the best. My father always talked about it, the structure, the discipline. Every branch of service has their pluses, but that was the path that I wanted because those were the stories that I grew up hearing about as a kid from my father. My mother threw a little wrinkle in there because she wouldn't sign for me active duty. I graduated from high school when I was 17, and my mother wasn't really on board with the whole military thing. But my father just kind of, he was there with me, just kind of met, and we were like, well, let's try this, let's try that. My dad was 100% on board. My mom wasn't, and she kind of made the rules in the house. So my dad was like, well, we got to do what your mom wants to do. So we met halfway, and we compromised with the reserves. So I was able to go in the reserves, and my mom would sign for me to go in. My parents back then, you know, you had your parents that still had to sign. And I didn't want to wait another year to go in. I just couldn't wait. So I was like, I'll do a straight 8 in the Marine Corps, in the reserves. And I went off to Parris Island for boot camp. And one thing, I wasn't prepared for boot camp as much as I thought I was. Because even when you talk to the recruiters, they're like, you know, hey, you're going to have a great time. You're going to do this. You're going to get to do some great things after boot camp. But they never really talk about boot camp. And boot camp is a very important part to the Marine Corps. You see a lot of people wash out because you can't make it, or at least you give up mentally. It's one thing to give up physically because you break something or whatever, but the mental breakdown. And I know that's a part of it. It's just separating those who should be there as opposed to those that shouldn't be there. But going into the Marine Corps really set the stage because as a young 17-year-old, I just was completely focused. It gave me all the focus that I needed. It kept me on track because there are just things about a Marine that you want your uniform to be tight all the time. Your uniform is neat, everything has to be in place. It just gives you a lot of structure as a young man. And I know it's not for everyone, but for me, it took care of everything that I needed. And when I got out of boot camp, when I graduated from boot camp, it was on from there because I just knew there was nothing stopping me from there.
Sure. And so you could have been a police officer anywhere, presumably. Let's talk about why Harrisburg. How did you make that decision to locate here?
In my mind, I think I could have been a police officer anywhere. I tried a couple places. I took the state police test. I took a test for Ben Salem, I think it was, police department. What hit for me for Harrisburg was, well, my best friend was dating a girl that lived in Harrisburg at the time. And he said, hey, why don't you take this police test with me? He said, so I have somebody to take the test with because his girlfriend lived in Harrisburg and we both lived in Philly. And I'm like, Harrisburg. At the time, I think my godfather lived up here. He worked for Community Legal Services. And I said, okay, Harrisburg, okay, whatever. I really didn't know where it was at. I knew it was the capital, but I really hadn't, other than a kid a couple times coming up to see my godfather, I really didn't know much about Harrisburg. So what truly got me to Harrisburg was my best friend, because his girlfriend lived here. So I took the testing process with him, and I got offered the job. I remember when I got offered the job, through the testing process, when it became clear that I was going to get the job, I remember talking to my buddy, and I'm like, "Hey, what happened?" And he was like, "Well, I didn't make the cut I wasn't offered the job." But I said, "Well, I'm not going to take the job." And he goes, "Man, are you crazy?" He's like, "That's like a career. That's all you ever talk about is the police department and this and that." So he said, "Take the job." So reluctantly, I was like, "Okay, well, I don't know anybody in Harrisburg," but I did it, and it was the best decision that I could have made. When I sit back and think about it, I only ever felt homesick one time for Philadelphia, and that was, I think, in 2015. I went back to Philadelphia for command school through Northwestern University, and the Philly officers made me feel homesick because they questioned me. They were like, "Why are you in Harrisburg and not here in Philly?" And it made me think, and I'm like, "Yeah, that's a good question now." But I think a big piece of it was at the time, my brother was a highway patrolman in Philadelphia, and I didn't want to compete with my brother. That was like the elite of Philadelphia, and I wanted to make a name for myself, and I figured I can go to Harrisburg and I can be me, and I won't owe anybody anything. And my background investigator was a guy by the name of Ernie Macon, and Mr. Macon was he was a great guy. He still is a great guy. I remember when he did my background, he came to my parents' house, and my father greeted him, and just him and my father talking back and forth. I think he probably talked to me for about 15 or 20 minutes, and he talked to my dad for about probably close to 4 hours. And they just sat at the table, and they were talking back and forth about me becoming a Harrisburg policeman. I just remember listening to him for a little bit and listening to my dad, and I said, "Well, clearly this is a conversation between you two. I'm going to go sit in the other room and let you guys finish talking." And I did. I went in the other room, and they talking, and finally they both called me back into the room. And Mr. Macon at the time said, again, I'm just the kid sitting in the room. He's like, "Okay, well, Walt, he's gonna live with me while he's in the police academy." And my dad was like, "Okay, well, that sounds good, and you're gonna keep a good eye out on him." He's like, "I'll watch over him. He'll be good. I got him." And again, I'm sitting there like, okay, whatever. And I didn't think it was. I knew what was going on, but it just didn't seem real at that point until I got the letter. And once I got the letter that said, "You're accepted. This is your date to be here," and my dad was like, "Okay, here we go." Mm-hmm. And we loaded up the U-Haul. We drove to Ernie Macon's house, and we unloaded, and we went in the academy. And yeah, that's me in the back, the real skinny guy in the back. I think I was probably about maybe 140 pounds back then.
Oh, my.
Yeah, I was skinny, really skinny.
Well, we're going to come back and talk more with you about your career, but let's bring in some of our guests and have them pick up the story a little bit. And let's go to retired Detective John O'Connor first, because I understand you met Deric, I guess, for the first time in the academy. Is that right? Can you tell us about the first meeting and your impressions?
I met Deric in the academy, and when you're applying, there's all these people. You don't get to know them until you're actually sitting in a seat. And Deric and I sat in the same row, and that was in 1992. And I think we started the academy in May. And the first day we met, it's like instant best friends. A lot of laughs and good times in the academy.
Yeah. And you shared a common bond with the Marine Corps, is that right?
I did, and there's a lot of things we hit up. I was an altar boy. I joined the Marine Corps. His dad served in the military. My dad did too, and there's just so much in common with us and our desire to be Harrisburg police officers and be the best ones we could be.
Great. Well, let's talk a little bit about DC's time as a Harrisburg police officer. You rose up together, began together. What are some of your reflections of your time with him?
There's so many stories, and I know we're limited on time. And I promised Chief Carter I would keep my stories at a G level instead of I don't want to. But the one story that sticks out, and I think it really shows why he's my best friend and why he's so valuable to the city. Years ago, we were trying to make some extra money for our families, and we worked a sportsman show. And Deric, I thought he was insane, would go out and direct traffic in February on Cameron Street. And I don't know if you guys have any idea what that is. There was 15,000 people going to the show, and there was absolutely no parking, and traffic was a mess. And most cops would just throw their hands in the air and give up. But Deric was out there every day of the sportsman show and trying to direct traffic, and he wants to help everybody, and you can't because there's no spaces out there. Even the big shots and with their placards and people with handicap, there's no spots. So Deric had to move them on. He was trying to be so polite. And he would come into the, when he was out there, when I would see him, he looked like a Tokyo traffic cop trying to keep the traffic moving. And he would come inside and he was all bummed out because he couldn't make everybody happy. And I said, "What's wrong?" And he says, "I didn't mind the people giving me the fingers and swearing at me and calling me names. But when an old lady looked at me, beeped her horn and looked right at me and gave me the thumbs down, that really hurt his feelings." And I had to cheer him up. And people would, now this is where I watched his back on those few times. I worked in the front office of the sportsman show, and people would come in to complain about the parking. And Chuck Keller was a lieutenant, and I think a captain too, and he would leave his jacket there. So I'd hear people complain about the guy directing traffic out there. So I would take Chuck Keller's jacket, put it on, pretend I was and act like I was a captain, and people would come in and tell that guy out there, he wouldn't let me park. And I would say, "Yeah, I'm going to get to the bottom of this. I'm going to discipline him." So these people would leave all happy that they got this officer in trouble. And I watched his back doing that. Then when we worked the show, and I'm getting to the point with his leadership, but I wanted to show how dedicated he is, because most cops would just quit and get in their car and just say, forget it. But he stuck it out there in the cold. Just shows his level of dedication. Now, years went by, and I was half asleep guarding the door, and all of a sudden my chair's kicked. "Hey, wake up, you're in charge." And I'm like, "I'm in charge?" All of a sudden, I was in charge of 80 people at the sportsman show. And I know it's only a 2-week gig, but I never led anything in my life. And I go to the new guy who's running the show, and he says, "I need this and I need that." And I gave him my confident face. But inside, I'm like, "Oh my God, what am I going to do? Where's Deric?" So I pulled Deric in, and he was my right-hand man. I shined, and these guys, these big shots from Connecticut, thought I was the best leader there was. "Oh my gosh, we want to hire you." And it was all because of Deric, because I projected a confident face, but inside I was like, "Oh my God, what am I going to do? What am I going to do?" And Deric, right beside me, was the calm in the storm. He made sure people were posted right. He made sure people got paid. He made sure they were fed. He did all the integral works that made me shine. And this went on for a few years. And he would referee fights there too. That helped out. But then I got enough of it. I ran it for 7 years. I mean, it went by real quick. And I said, "Deric, this is yours now. You can run it." And so I wasn't there for him, and he ran it. And like all hell broke loose. There was snowstorms and SWAT teams and hostage situations. And Deric came to me and he says, "You were so lucky this crap didn't happen when you were there." And I should have said it aloud. I was lucky, but not for the reasons he thought. I was lucky I had him watching my back. And I just want to tell that story. It shows he's the guy who sweats the details, and he made me shine. And, not to criticize other people, but if you had someone else in there that was not into the game and wanted to do the right thing, it would have fell apart. But Deric made it solid and made it move, and he was a lot of fun to work with.
Thanks. That's a great story, and it's in keeping with what I remember in my early conversations after becoming mayor, learning about the Sportsman Show, how much time and energy it took to schedule all the shifts and to coordinate this extra duty pay, and to literally DC would have to take time off in order to see to every detail, and and he is a detail-oriented individual. Every budget presentation that we've had, or every discussion that we've had before City Council about the police bureau, has always been a very focused, detailed, and considerate discussion of whatever the matter was. I think it's one of the traits that I valued in him, and that you clearly have seen in him. Did you know from the beginning? Could you tell when you were together in the police academy that this is somebody who was going to rise up in the leadership ranks and potentially become deputy chief one day?
Not at the time. We were just young guys wanting to be cops and, get the bad guy. It wasn't until 2003, Deric decided to take the corporal's test, and he became a corporal. And I saw his leadership and how he ran things, and I said, oh, this guy's going all the way to the top. Mm-hmm. And I was very lucky to have him as a supervisor sometimes in the criminal investigations division, because he went on the patrol side and I went to detective side, and we got to meet finally where he became a supervisor in the detective division, and he was awesome. He said, John, what do you need? And I said, hey, I need guys for this, and that. And I need guys, SWAT team for the search warrant. And he made it done. And again, he made me shine. The DAs thought I was a great detective, but there's all this people in the back that help you out. And Deric was the main one to make you shine.
That's great. Well, it's sure.
Your Honor, Deric was my best man at my wedding, and that was in 1994. And I am the godfather to his son, and that was in 1992. So I just want to let you know how close we are.
Sure. Yeah, that bond is it's an extraordinary bond, and thank you for sharing those stories. Let's go now to retired Captain Gabe Oliva, who is also joining us today via Zoom. And Gabe, I know you served alongside DC for quite some time, but maybe you can talk to your experiences. I understand you were both on the county crisis response team together. What type of an individual was Deric Moody in your eyes?
Well, we actually met in the locker room. He used to work 3 to 11 shift, and I worked midnight shift. So we would literally be crossing each other in the locker room almost every evening. So that's where our friendship began. And our careers kind of parallel each other. Deric was actually recruited to be on the negotiator for the Dauphin County Crisis Response Team. And he recruited me as well. And I joined the team in 2005. The one incident that comes into mind was an individual who, I don't know, Deric, if you remember this one. It was an individual that didn't speak English. He was holding a child hostage. And we get sent to this house, and it's a regular house. We go in, and we're in the living room area, and the individual's in the dining room area, and they're right there. We probably have 10 or 15 tactical officers in those 2 rooms. The gentleman is seated on a love seat, I believe. In one hand, he has a 2-foot-long sword, and in the other hand, he's holding a pit bull on a leash. And he has this child sleeping behind him, and he's saying that he's going to harm the child if anyone tries to arrest him. So I remember trying to speak to him, and with negotiators, you have a primary, and that's the individual who speaks first. And you have a secondary, and that's the person that actually kind of coaches you through. Well, our conversations were in Spanish, so Deric wasn't able to assist me much with the coaching there. But I do remember him coming up behind me and grabbing me by my vest. And as I'm talking to the individual, he very quietly whispers into my ear, And what he says is you have snipers basically looking over each one of your shoulders. Says, I'm going to hold you in place and I will move you to make sure if they have to take a shot, that they can. So Deric moves me to the left, to the right, a little bit forward, a little bit back. And he says, okay, I'm going to hold you here. You're trying to focus on this individual so he doesn't harm a kid. And you have to basically give all control to where you are to the other person for your safety. And he and I have been in those kind of situations several times. And literally he says, I got you. And that's been our careers together. Like I said, we've paralleled our careers together. We got promoted several times together, negotiated together, and I couldn't ask for a better coworker or a better friend.
Wow, what a story, and really speaks to the level of trust and that goes on every day as a police officer as part of your working relationships. You're in the position of having served on the command staff with DC Moody. Can you talk a little bit about his leadership style and how he was as a leader?
Well, I consider myself very blessed. First, because when I was part of the command staff, we were friends. Commissioner Carter, DC Moody, and myself, we were friends before we got into those positions. So when we got into those positions, it was very beneficial that we had that friendship, because we all understood that we wanted to make the department better. We've always talked through our careers and how if we got into that position, we would try to make it better. And we literally were there together, trying to make things better for everyone. So from that perspective, I was truly blessed. Deric and I worked hand in hand in a lot of different things. He was able to guide me on several different things regarding his detail. He is very detail oriented. But he's done that throughout his career. So command staff for us was just a culmination of our careers, because Commissioner DC Moody and I have always worked together. Even when the commissioner was in the Detective Bureau, DC Moody was on power shift, we always somehow came together working on different cases. So like I said, I was truly blessed at the time to work with him. Great partnership, a lot of challenges, and we were always able to meet those challenges because we were there with each other.
Yeah, and I have to say, as an observer here, that your personalities and skill sets really complement each other, together you worked as a seamless team, able to and did improve the department. So we're greatly appreciative of that. Let's go now to Lieutenant Goshert, retired Lieutenant Goshert, who was a lieutenant early on when Deric Moody was a member of the Harrisburg Police Department. And you can tell a little bit about your experiences as a supervisor looking at this young police officer and getting him trained and involved in his time at the Harrisburg Police Department.
Mayor, I first met Deric when he just first got out of the police academy. I was in charge of the narcotics unit. So one of my things was always looking for undercover guys that no one in the criminal community in Harrisburg would know. So I was constantly talking to the background investigators when new people would get hired. Hey, who would be a good guy that could work undercover? Talked to Ernie Macon, and Ernie Macon said, John, I have a good one for you here. His dad and his brother, they're both Philly cops. He's from Philadelphia. He doesn't know Harrisburg from a can of paint, and he seems like a good young man. So we were able to, I talked to him right after he got out of the academy, asked him if he would be interested in doing some undercover work, told him, some of the downfalls of it and some of the challenges and dangerous things that go with that. And I mean, he was on board. I found him to be a very respectful young man, good guy. It was supposed to be a month-long investigation, The chief of police at that time, Richard Schaefer, said, hey, you will have him no longer than a month. Well, that month-long investigation stretched into about 6 months plus investigation. And it was what a great investigation. He bought from over 100 people, mostly heroin and cocaine. And I'll tell you what is, I always wonder how they'll do that in court, new guys like that. And I'll never forget, we were sitting in court. He was testifying on a drug case, and a couple of the other narcotics officers were sitting there with me. And I thought, wow, this guy is good. And I looked at one of the other officers, Detective Willie Holland, and I said to Willie, I said, you know what, Willie, someday that guy will be our boss. Now, I retired before he became my boss, which was probably good for me and probably good for Deric, because I don't know how it done under him. But I'll tell you, what a great young man.
That's great to hear. And DC, let me just turn to you and talk about, maybe you could tell a little bit about, what was that experience like?
To come on to the job, and first of all, you couldn't ask for a better scenario. I was 22 when I came on the job. I went to the academy. I wanted to be a police officer for the right reasons. At least I thought what were the right reasons, what my father taught me, what was important. And I get to meet a group of, at the time, to me, older officers who were really the pioneers in the field. They were the guys that were like, they knew what they were doing and they wanted to teach. And that's, to me, it was a two-part thing. You want to do it, and you need to have a good teacher. And I got a chance out of the academy. I really didn't know what I was signing up for, so I will say that. It sounded interesting, a young guy coming on the job, hey, we're going to do some undercover work. And I was figuring, hey, I'm from Philly. This to me at the time, I'm like, Harrisburg was like country to me. I'm like, oh, this will be easy. Like, this will be really easy. But a lot of that is based off, you watch TV, you think these things. And then when you really have to do it, it's important to pay attention to what you're learning. And for those that knew Willie Holland, Willie was like, he was like everybody's dad. Well, Goshert was the dad. He was the dad. But then there was Willie. And Willie, I remember the conversations Willie would have with me, like if you messed up a little bit on the buy or something didn't go the way it was supposed to be, Willie would he would come and have a talk with you. And I didn't want to have a lot of talks from Willie, like where I was doing things wrong. But I remember I had made a buy one day from uptown, and I let the money walk. And what that means is I ordered up some drugs from somebody, and the guy said, well, give me the money and I'll come back. Well, you never do that. That's just, it was silly. But I really just, it sounded good. It sounded like it was a good thing to do. And I did it, and lo and behold, the guy never came back, and neither did the money. And so now I'm sitting there thinking, like, how am I going to explain this? They gave me money to go do something and to bring stuff back, and I don't have it. And I remember going back, and I was feeling a little bummed out, and I remember Willie is like, and I'm not going to imitate his voice because Willie had a certain way that he would say it to you. And Willie was like, Moody, just you never let your money walk. You can come up with a whole bunch of other stories why you don't want to let your money walk, but you never let your money walk away. And I remember thinking through the rest of my time in career as an undercover officer and even doing other people, that was the story I always told them. The first thing I was like, don't let the money walk. Hold on to the money. But the vice guys at the time, because it was Willie, it was Blasco, Craig LeCadre, Goshert, Willie Arnold, Bill Arnold, they were just great guys to work around with. They played a lot of practical jokes, which were funny, but they made the work fun. And I really felt like once I got in with them, it felt like a tight-knit family. And from my experiences with the Vice unit, that's how I went into running other specialty units. But that was learned from Goshert. Lieutenant Goshert at the time was, and I still consider to be a very smart man. He knew what he was doing. And if you had something you need to go to and talk to him about, he would talk to you. I remember being a recipient of a practical joke. One of Arnie's many practical jokes, and it dealt with handcuffs. And I remember Arnie had talked me into going down to talk to the chief of police about getting a different set of handcuffs. And when he told the story, it seemed like a good idea, the way he explained it to me, how I needed to go talk to the chief, because he said, you know, hey, when you get hired, they give you these 2 different sets of handcuffs. Somebody just decided these are the ones that are good for you. He says, but he says, you can get your other cuffs. He said, the thing of it is they'll play with you and try to pretend like they don't know what you're talking about. He says, so you got to be really firm about it and really let them know that you want your handcuffs. He says, as a matter of fact, you almost have to demand them. So I remember getting all hyped up from Arnie, and he's telling me the story, and I'm like, okay, sounds great. So he's like, okay, off you go. And I'm going down to the 2nd floor to the chief's office to demand my other set of handcuffs. And thank God, Lieutenant Goshert was walking by, and he's like, hey, bub, where you going? And I said, well, I'm going to go see the chief to get my other set of handcuffs that Arnie told me they have in his desk drawer. Because Arnie even told me what desk drawer they were in. He said, it's in the 2nd desk drawer down below. He said, in case he tries to tell you he doesn't have them there. And I remember Goshert saying, nope, turn around, go back upstairs. And he never told me at the time that Arnie was playing a joke on me. But I do remember walking back up to the office because I'm thinking like, well, I didn't want the hinge cuffs. I want the chain ones that Arnie said I could get. And I remember going back up into the office, and I remember Goshert yelling at Arnie. It's like, now, don't be doing that. He was like, don't have him down there doing that, getting in trouble. And that's when I started thinking, like, wait a minute, this guy just got me. But Goshert was, he was my dad, and I had a lot of dads there, but he helped guide and develop me in that specific type of police enforcement. That was his thing. It always was. And I remember just looking at him and saying, hey, that's the guy to watch. That's how you learn how to do things. And Goshert just never seemed to have a problem. You could hit him with anything, and it would just be like, okay, bub, we'll figure it out, and we'll get it figured out. But he was by far, out of all of the bosses that I worked for, and I had a lot of great bosses, he was by far the best one to work for, because he just let you be creative, and he taught you, and he learned. And that's a big thing in the police thing, is just learning. You have to learn. And he did it to me. It wasn't that he was doing it for money. It was pure passion for doing the right thing. And that's what I got from a lot of the older guys back then. It was like, pay attention to the older guys. Don't come in thinking like, oh, these old guys, they don't know anything. Well, no, they actually do. So I was very blessed to have come in under him. And from there, my track record from there just went off the charts, because I got experience to something as a young officer that most officers will never get a chance to do. Taught me how to testify in court. It taught me how to spot drugs. It taught me how to buy drugs. It taught me how to talk about drugs, to do that job very well. And it was fun.
Yeah, those types of mentorships and relationships, so important. Back to you, Lieutenant Goshert, just for a minute. Obviously, you're still active. You're working for the county, and you now have a different type of relationship with the city. Can you talk about how interacting with the command staff and with the Harrisburg Police as part of this second part of your career has been sort of different than the first part?
Well, Mayor, what I was hoping you could do would be cancel DC Moody's retirement, because he's sort of my go-to guy over there. I bring up to him, well, remember I helped you when you were doing undercover things and this and that. But I have a different role now, more of an administrative role. But you still have to stay focused on who does the work, and who does the work is the patrol officers. The line detectives, they're the ones that do the work. And as long as you can keep that in mind, you're good to go. Hopefully you'll take my advice and cancel any retirements over there, that Deric can stay.
Oh, believe me, I tried, and I don't think that's going to be possible this time. But as you yourself have shown, there's all sorts of possibilities in retirement for new career paths, and perhaps he will intersect with us again in the future. Let's go to Dennis Sorensen, who is also joining us. And you have the distinct pleasure of being our new deputy chief. So you will be sworn in on Monday as DC Moody retires as the new deputy chief for the Harrisburg Police. But your career has also paralleled DC Moody's, and maybe you can share a few of your observations and experiences.
Well, obviously, Mayor, I have to keep it short because in true Deric Moody fashion, he talks a lot. And that's what my whole thing is about here. So I first met Deric in the academy. We all joined the academy, Johnny O. There was 9 of us. It was a really, really good class, really tight group. And when you look at that class and what they did in the Harrisburg Police, it was a pretty amazing group of people. Right away, Johnny O and Deric hooked up as best friends because they're Marines. And I really wanted to start this off with a joke about Marines, but then I figured I didn't have time because I had to explain it more than 2 or 3 times to Deric and John on the program. We just would run out of time. Because I was an Army guy and they're Marines, and all we do was pick on each other. But even then, Deric was he was young. He was 22, I think. He was the same age as my brother. And I kind of looked at him as like a young brother to me, even though he's my boss. He's still at that time, we were all pretty young and just wanted to be police officers and be good at what we did. But one thing he could do is he could tell a story, and he was really funny. But his ability to talk, to other people, to people outside agencies, to citizens, as one thing he could really do is he could always talk to people. And he became more and more polished over the years. And it really benefited us. After you get out of the academy, you kind of like split into different groups. You go to different platoons, you do different things. Deric went and did the undercover stuff for quite some time. And then he got assigned to 311. So we really didn't hook up working together up until we got into CID. And the one thing that we did up in CID is eventually we became office mates and supervisors. And we had good communication. And we would, no matter what position I took or he took, the other one of us would take the other position, and whether it was we're talking about a case, we're talking about what we're going to do, and it made us have a better product over time because he would say, hey, I got this case, this is what we're thinking about doing, and I would take the opposite position every time and beat him up, and he would do the same to me. So what it made us do was have a much better product at the end, and we'd already thought through all the things that could happen or go wrong. And we continue that even today. And we sit and we discuss a problem. I'll take a position, he takes one, we beat each other up, and at the end we come up with a much better product. But the one thing, as you heard, he was a hostage negotiator for CRT. And you can see even on this program how polished he is. He can talk. And this one thing is like, hey, bud, you got a few minutes to talk about something? And I'm, sure. But hey, I got to go in 10 minutes. Wanda's waiting at home for me. No problem. An hour later, I'm driving home trying to explain to Wanda, what happened? Where are you at? And I'd be like, I stopped to see DC before I left, and he held me up for like an hour. She understood exactly what I was talking about, because she knows him, and the man can talk. Mayor, if you asked him 2 more questions, there would have been no time for anybody else in this program.
Well, that's why we've been splitting it up here. But I promise we're gonna keep it. We're gonna bring it in right at the hour. And just on that note, I will attest to that fact and say that if I knew you were going to be in front of City Council, I prepared for it to be at least a 4-hour meeting. That was for sure. But absolutely. So can you just talk now? You're going to be taking over now as deputy chief. We're really appreciative of that. And how do you look to how are you looking to sort of build on the legacy which DC Moody has established?
Well, that's one thing I realized right away is I am not Deric Moody, and I can't fill his shoes. He's the guy in the Bureau who has the institutional knowledge about how to get things done. For that, we are going to be, we have a lot of catching up to do because if there was ever a question, he'd always have the answer. But at the same time, everyone brings a different approach to the job. And he has a very polished skill set. I'm not polished. I'm just a guy who works in the salt mines. Somehow he convinced to finally accept this job. But at the end of the day, I'm just going to do the best, and I'll think about the times we interacted and how we problem solved, and that will help me figure out things in the future. And like you said, as one person leaves, other people come in and new opportunities arise. we have a great team here at the Harrisburg Police, so we'll be able to work through this. It'll just be very painful, and he didn't take me off speed dial, I hope, but we'll see how it goes.
And I think he does get credit for helping convince you to step up and take the job. So there's a legacy in and of itself. And we all know how polished you are and how much you command the respect of the Harrisburg Police. So wonderful. We're gonna let in terms of our guests, I want to conclude with the commissioner who has also joined us from his office. And Commissioner Carter, maybe you'd like to reflect on, a sort of defining moment over your career with DC Moody?
Yes, Mayor, I would. Hello, everyone. When Deric and I took over the agency, there was no blueprint, no nothing. We had to learn everything from the fly. And I noticed one thing about Deric right away, that he is a detailed person. I used to go in Deric's office and ask him different things. And Dennis, everybody else said, that conversation lasted for a long time. And I admired that about him, because he wouldn't leave anything out. Deric and I, when I first met Deric, I had been here for a couple years, and Deric was from Philadelphia. And I said, who's this skinny kid from Philly, because he was always laughing and joking, always had purpose and stuff like that. I learned he was attached to the vice unit, and he did an outstanding job there. Every part of the police agency that Deric touched, Deric did an outstanding job, And we had the pleasure of sharing the same office up in CID like Dennis and Deric did. And we became closer, and he was just the type of person that you would want on your team. When I became chief, Deric and I, we had conversation, and Deric interviewed for captain, and he made it. Did an outstanding job. And so one day I knew that I was going to make Deric mad. I said, hey, Deric, guess what? He was like, yeah, boss. I said, you're going to Philadelphia to Northwestern Academy. But the problem is that you got to be there Monday, and today is Friday. And he looked at me and he said, are you serious? I said, yes. So then Deric made telephone calls, and so he was there. He became the vice president of that class. Just did an outstanding job. Everything that he touches, you can see the finished product of everything, and it's always an outstanding product. And you're right, Mayor, in front of city council, it's like sometimes I was getting short, and so Deric could say, boss, let me answer your question. And I would start laughing because Deric, he would answer the question, and he was like, the gyres of bunny. He would just keep going on and on and on, But he always came up with the right thing to say. He knew what he was talking about. He had the data to back it up. So it was never any questions or anything like that. For me, first Gabe left, and now Deric is leaving, and I have, qualified people, to put in their place, but I was used to Gabe. I'm used to Deric. Dennis is an outstanding guy, and I know Dennis and I will work well together. When we're up in CID, I have to say to Deric, what is John doing? What is this guy doing? One time he fell through a garage roof and stuff like that. I mean, we just had fun. We just had fun, and I miss them all. So it's going to be a transitional period for me. I'm going to probably, still call Deric and, bug him and stuff like that. But it's just one thing funny about Deric and I. We never hung out together or anything like that. We went to different functions together. He's never been to my house. I've never been over to Deric's house. I drove by Deric's house because he was the person driving. I never really knew where he lived at, But I just love the guy. He was always a little brother to me. Somebody that I respect and that I love, that I'm gonna miss very, very much. So it's just a sad time, and the citizens of Harrisburg, I'm sure, are very thankful for everything that Deric has done, because he dedicated his whole life to the city, and he's done an outstanding job.
Thanks, Commissioner. Thanks for putting us at that note as we wrap up. I have to say, while it is sad, it is also an opportunity for growth and change in the department, and you're not going anywhere. You're going to be around and on speed dial. And the fact that everybody has come together for this show just shows what a tight-knit relationships have been formed over the last generation at the Harrisburg Police Department. But one of the reasons we wanted to do this show is because, it's been a tough year for policing in America, and we're having recruitment challenges, and it's difficult to fill the ranks. And I think telling the story, the successful story of a life, 28 years dedicated to policing and the building of lifelong friendships and just what it's like, would be of interest to the public, and I'm sure it has been. But on that note, do you want to talk a little bit about maybe why, if people are watching, this type of career path could be a good one to choose if you're interested in public service?
Sure. I'll try to keep it as short as possible. No, the policing profession is a great profession. I worry about it when you watch what's going on in the world today. I get nervous. It's been everything to me. You live it, you breathe it. You do, everything is about the profession and where the profession is going and how the profession should be. It's been a fantastic experience for me. It's been everything that I thought it would be. Even as a young guy coming up, and Gabe kind of alluded to it, or Johnny, one of them said it, you talk about as a young officer, like what I would do differently if I had the opportunity. And the one thing I caution people is you can say that, but be prepared. That day may come that you will actually have to put those words into action. To me, the profession as a kid, it was a dream. I got to do my dream. Not everyone gets to do that. So it makes it a little more special, because when that's all you thought about, like, this is, I want to do this and I want to do that. But I got to live out my dream in my profession. So it pains me when I see what's happening to it now. We're responsible for it. We have our part in it. We've allowed things to happen to it that maybe we shouldn't have. But in the same token of the pain of the profession deserves great people. It does. It has to have good people with here, not about money, here. It starts at the heart and in the mind. And we need that, and it still needs that. And I always, when I think about it, I think about like the days of the dinosaur. If our profession can't evolve, if it can't change, then it'll go extinct, it'll go away. And I'm extremely fearful of that day. I wouldn't want to think what the landscape would look like without people willing to step up for people who either can't or who won't step up. And that's what it means to me to be a police officer. It's about doing more for others. It's about service. It's about service to everyone, regardless of their situation. And to do it, but to do the profession, you have to have a strong backing. And it's difficult without that. I can, my wife has been there the entire time. She's been like my backbone to do this, because without her support, I couldn't have done half the things that I've done. Without my good friends that you heard from today, and so many more. There were so many more people that shaped my life, and they're giving me credit now, but what they don't realize is that they were a part of that. They helped build that and make that what it is. I love this profession, but it's time to go. It's time to do something else, and that's what I want to do. I want to try something else. I've been a police officer my entire adult life, and I want to try being a regular person. Just for a little bit. We'll see where it goes. But I want to just be a regular guy for a little bit and feel it from the other side. I feel what it's like on this side, Now I want to feel what it's like on the other side. And I still want to be part of the solution and not part of the problem.
Well, as hard as it is to see you go, we certainly respect that and wish you all the best as you enter this new chapter of your life. Moment, I don't know if we have a few questions from the public, and I know we've got. Oh, you're going to put them up, but I do want to do this while we take a look at those responses. As as appreciation for you, we have. We're going to have a ceremony on Monday, and there's going to be a lot of celebration then. But one thing which I've done on very rare occasions is present a key to the city of Harrisburg. So I'm going to put my mask on, and just walk over to you in studio. Forgot the earphone. But you can go ahead and you can put that on.
Oh, this is nice. Thank you, Mayor.
And as you wear that, we're going to take a look at those comments. And I think we'll go out with a montage today. So if you're watching at home, thank you for watching this. We'll be back next week with another edition of Community Conversations, and I'll let Momin take us out with the montage.